Alright people, welcome to the third installment of the A Deck for Every Season series for Warhammer Underworlds. And today I'm going to build a deck for the Beastgrave season, and that's a very kind of uneven season. We have teams like Morgwaiths, Grash Shraks, which are kind of, and I mean Worms, but isn't all that strong, but then we have really strong teams like Morgox and Ribas. So I'm really excited here to see what we kind of fish up from the dice rolls here. And so let's just get cracking. Before we get cracking, however, make sure to like the video, hit the bell button, leave a comment, and subscribe, of course. All of that stuff helps us out massively. So let's get going. Alright, so I'm ready to roll my d8 here, and it's a 5. Okay, so that will be the Ironsoul Condemners. Very interesting. But I'm very excited to get going. So let's check here, Underworlds DB. Let's clear my last deck here. Let's pick Nemesis and the... Where do we have it? It's actually from Dread Fame, but we're gonna count it towards the Beastgrave season, of course. Let's start, as always, with the searches for the faction-specific searches here. First up, we have Forceful Banishment, which is a search score immediately when an enemy fighter is driven back by a friendly fight's attack with knockback ability. So let's check the fighter cards here, shall we? The fighter cards can't be checked here, but I know for a fact that 2 of the fighters have knockback uninspired and the leader gets it inspired. So it's very, very easy to score. You just have to make sure that you don't kill the enemy, because then there will be no knocking back, and they are quite potent when it comes to damage dealing. 2 of the fighters can deal 3 damage, 1 uninspired and 1 inspired. So they're very both accurate and potent in the terms of damage dealing. Then we have Martial Prowess, which is scored immediately after your warband makes a third or subsequent successful attack. That's a bit steep, even with such high accuracy attacks. Once you start losing fighters, it might be hard to pull off some attacks, and you just can't guarantee attacks like that. It's very tempting, but I think it's kind of like a little bit of a lure with that 2 glory search, so I'm going to leave it. Wrathful Blow, a friendly fight's attack action takes an enemy fighter action, and that friendly fighter had 1 or more wound tokens. So we have 3 fighters, and they are very likely to get wound tokens, and killing someone with any one of them is probably also very likely. Although I normally don't really like cards that require you to take fighters out of action. With this warband you surely will. Then we have Your Turn, which is scored immediately when an enemy fighter is driven back into an hex adjacent to a friendly fighter. So given that we also have knockback, it's pretty easy to set up the drive back into an adjacent hex. So I think this, I mean, I've taken it most of the times I'm playing these Ironsoul Condemners, and I usually are able to score it, so I'm gonna take that one. So let's check the end phase cards. I know for a fact that a lot of these cards in the end phase department requires you to have 2 fighters left, which I'm regularly not so fond of. I just took a search that kind of requires that, but I think at the same time, if you only have 1 fighter left in any of the end phases except like the last, you're probably not in for a very good ride anyway, so we shouldn't be too afraid of taking these cards. First up, we have Etheric Mastery, which is scored in an end phase if there are 2 more surviving friendly fighters and all friendly fighters are inspired. That's very dice dependent. We are depending on crits to inspire us. I think for a fact it's both in attack or defense. Yeah, defense or attack roll. So that's pretty fine, right? But I think still it's a bit steep to have all of them inspired. I mean, I'm on the fence about it. Let's leave it for now. Sacrosanct Purge scored in end phase if 2 more enemy fighters were taken out of action in this round, which is very steep. Even with accurate fighters killing 2 in the same round, it's very matchup dependent, and you won't reliably score it against something like Morgox, but you will probably very reliably score it versus something like any swarm team, really, to be fair. But it's just 1 glory, and it's too unreliable for 1 glory. Sally Forth is scored in an end phase if there are 2 more friendly fighters adjacent to each other in enemy territory. It's pretty easy to stop, but it's just 1 glory, and they don't have good moves, so you might just end up in no man's land, especially if you get pushed. So just for 1 glory, I'm not really that fond of it. Stormforged Heroes is a duel, scored in end phase if there are 2 more surviving friendly fighters, and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more upgrades. That's pretty easy, but it's also just 1 glory. And if you draw into just 2 upgrades, and you have 3 surviving fights in the first round, you kind of shit out of luck. Strength in unity is also just 1 glory. You score it in an end phase if there are 2 more surviving friendly fighters, and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move tokens, 1 or more charge tokens, or each surviving friendly fighter has 1 more guard token. So it kind of dictates that you need to have the same kind of tokens on all of your fights. And that's pretty easy to stop, and I think that's easy enough for it to be worth just 1 glory. So this one is pretty easy. It should be easy for 1 glory, but I'll take it. Uncontested Might scores an end phase if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in enemy territory. That's pretty easy as well, right? I don't want to take too many 1 glory cards, but we can take it for now. Vengeance Satisfied is 2 glory for having more than half of the fights in 1 or more enemy warbands being out of action. If you're meeting stuff that gets resurrected, like the Exile Dead, you're kind of in for a bad ride with this card. But generally speaking, most teams don't raise stuff, and having half of the enemy warband die versus these guys, which are very accurate and deals a lot of damage, I think it's easy enough to score in 1 of the end phases to be worth those 2 glory. Vindicated Arrogance is scored in an end phase if your leader was the target of 1 or more attack action in this round and is on the battlefield. That's too unreliable for 1 glory, I think. And then we have maybe 1 third end phase. We don't, but I usually don't take third end phases anyway. So let's move over to deploys. We have Adaptive Tactics, which means that you draw up to 1 objective card and up to 1 power card, and then discard 1 objective card. And I don't really like discarding objective cards, so I'm gonna take a big pass on that one. Champions of Sigmar. The first range 1 or range 2 attack actions made by a friendly fighter in the next activation has innate support. Don't really like that. Fulminating Blast is a very strong card. You just push an enemy fighter, no restrictions. Obviously very good. Improvised Blow is an out-of-sequence attack. You choose a friendly fighter adjacent to an enemy fighter, so that's the caveat. And then you can do a range 1. Yeah, obviously it's a caveat because it's a range 1 attack. 1 range, 3 swords, 1 damage. But it does benefit from like plus damage cards, so it's not like it can't be modified. You can still modify it both by dice and damage, right? So it's pretty good. Out of sequence stuff is always very strong, right? Inevitable Blow. You get to pick, cleave, or ensnare. The first range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in next activation has that ability. Cleave or ensnare, I don't think it's strong enough. Plus 1 dice is always just so much better. And they don't really need more accuracy, to be fair, they have very good accuracy. Outflank, choose a friendly fighter adjacent to another fighter and push them. And them, have I learned the hard way, the English language, in this case, it means that fighter, them. It's kind of weird for us non-native English speakers, but you just get to push 1 guy with this card. Choose a friendly fighter adjacent to another fighter and push them up to 2 hexes. But it's still very good, so I'll take it. Then we have Steadfast, which is a guard token, and I'm really... Unless I'm gonna pick Fearsome Fortress, and I don't think I'm gonna, because I did that last time, so I'm gonna probably take something else. So I'm, for now, not gonna take the guard token card. Then we have Thunderous Smite, which is a reaction. You play it during a friendly fight's range 1 attack action that will succeed before the deal damage step. In that step, instead of dealing damage equal to the damage characteristic of the attack action, the target is dealt 1 damage, and each enemy fighter adjacent to the target is dealt 1 damage. I am gonna take this one, and I'm gonna tell you later why. Then we have Unyielding Resolve, which is basically Healing Potion. Well, it's exactly like Healing Potion. 50-50 to heal 2, otherwise you heal 1. That's for when you only have 3 fighters. You're you're gonna take really good care of them. You don't want anyone to die, so healing for this warband is useful. Then we have Vengeful Strike, which is a reaction placed during an enemy fighter's attack action that deals damage to an adjacent friendly fighter before the drive back step. So you can't use this like when you die, because if you die there's no drive back step. So you have to just get wounded. Then you roll an attack dice on a 50-50. You're not driven back and makes an attack action. I don't really like that. It just might do nothing for you, and it might do a lot for you, but I don't really like 50-50 cards, to be fair, so I'm gonna leave it out. Some people will probably leave it in, but that's fine. Then we have the upgrades, Etherically Charged Shield. You can re-roll one dice in the defense roll made for this fighter. I'm on the fence. I might include it for now, just because they all inspire the two shields. The shields are obviously very good. You have a 50-50 to roll a success, shield or crit. And with a reroll, it could be really useful, right? Then we have a Etherically Charged Weapon. It's a reroll, but it's only for the first attack you make each round. But still, that might be the only attack you make a round. Or like, if you charge, you're probably not going to do any more attack. Then we have Consecrated Pendant, which is +1 wound. I'm not sure, because if I am taking the Tooth and Claw deck here, there's so much stuff that's restricted to not having large fighters. And +1 wound seems tempting, but I'm gonna leave it out, I think. Then we have Enchanted Ropes, which is +1 move, and you treat lethal hexes as normal hexes. I don't think it's strong enough. Then we have Hallowed Aura. Reaction after an attack action that deals damage to this fighter. Roll an attack dice. On a 50-50 you heal 1. But it's a reaction after you dealt damage, a 50-50. I don't really like it. Then we have Punishing Blow, which is only for one fighter. Broder's Blightbane, which is kind of the brute. And then it's 1 range, 3 hammers, 4 damage with cleave, which is in the same profile, obviously. But it's 1 off for only one of the fighters, and he might just be dead when you draw this card, because he's the one most likely to be the most aggressive of your fighters. Then we have Sanctified Armor, which is damage reduction, which is very good when you have 3 fighters with 4 wounds. Then we have Soul Hardened Shield, and it's also a good way not to make your fighters large while getting the same or even better benefit of that which you would have gotten from a +1 wound card. Then we have Soul Hardened Shield. When this fighter is activated, before making an action with them, give them a guard token. Guard is obviously useful. I mean, if you do a charge, I'm gonna not take it. Spirit Flask action, choose 1, deal 1 damage to an adjacent enemy fighter or heal to this fighter, discard this card. No. So let's see. We have a decent amount of infection cards already taken here. Should we try the Tooth and Claw then? Let's see. Could we make this work? We have 3 searches already with a Forceful Banishment, which is the knockback, right? And then we have Wrathful Blow, which is kill someone with a wounded fighter. And then the drive back into another a hex adjacent to another friendly fighter. Okay. So I want to kind of, as much as possible, take cards that don't require me to kill stuff. And I'm going to take this Toyed With, because it means that you score it immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action. It doesn't need to be successful if 1 or more enemy fighters are vulnerable. And that synergizes very well with the Thunderous Smite, I think it was. Play this during a friendly fight's range 1 attack action that will succeed before the deal damage step in this step. Instead of dealing damage equal to the damage characteristic of the attack action, the target is dealt 1 damage, and each adjacent enemy fighter to the target is dealt 1 damage. I think that could work well with this card, right? Then we have Brief Savage. I think that's just a bit too hard. Score immediately after Savage friendly leader's attack action if the target was taken out of action and that was the second or subsequent fighter your leader has taken out of action. It's tempting for 2 glory. I think most of the 2 glory searches are just lures. Paragon of Ferocity. Take someone out of action. I think this embraced savagery for sure is very good, right? We have 3 fighters. Scores immediately after an activation if each surviving friendly fighter is savage. Super easy with 3 fighters. Given that you're savage if you have charge, or even if you have 1 guy left, you still score it, right? So we just need 1 more surge here. So Mold needs us to take someone out of action while having a supporting savage fighter. It's not impossible, but maybe we can find something easier. Macabre Spectacle, you score immediately after friendly fight's attack action that took the target out of action if that friendly fighter was savage before you activated them. So you can't like make them savage at the start of the turn because then they weren't savage before. So that doesn't work. But I think still it's fairly easy to accomplish, right? So maybe the Macabre Spectacle. Then we have Paragon of Ferocity. The scores immediately after savage friendly fighter's attack action takes the target out of action if the friendly fighter is in enemy territory or the target was a leader. To kill someone in enemy territory seems easy enough, but I think Macabre Spectacle is even easier. Okay, so there's our searches. Let's check the end phase cards. Do we have a 3rd end phase? No, we don't. So we need 3 regular end phase cards here. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is savage and or inspired, and there are no fighters holding objectives. I don't like that second part. It's too hard for 2 glory. It should have been 3 glory. Focal point scores in an end phase if a friendly leader is within 2 hexes of 2 or more other fighters from 2 or more warbands, and that leader is in enemy territory. Yes, your leader might die, but your leader is probably the one you're most likely to be taken care of not to die. So maybe this isn't too hard. But we need 3 cards. Scores in end phase if there are 3 or more friendly fighters. No, not gonna take that one because that's just too hard. Scores in end phase if each surviving friendly fights in enemy territory and then no enemy fights in your territory. I think, yeah, sure, you might not score it, but it's 3 glory. It's denial in any end phase. To have all of the fighters in enemy territory shouldn't be hard enough. That hard. So I think Hurricane Force will go in. Leadless Pack, you score an end phase if each enemy leader is out of action. It's just 1 glory and you have to kill a leader. He might be standing in a corner just buffing his defense. Move or die, 1 glory for having move or charge on everyone. Super easy. Do we need... Yeah, we need 1 more. So we need to take either the leader being adjacent to... Sorry, within 2 hexes of fighters from 2 warbands and being in enemy territory. Or this one with no fight solo objective. I don't really like it. Scores in emphasis of each enemy leader. It's just 1 glory. I think we need to kind of risk a slightly harder objective here. Let's take the focal point. I think we can make Ironsoul live to score this card. So that's our cards here. Let's go over to the ploys for the Tooth and Claw cards here. Binding Hex, choose 1 savage fighter within 3 hexes of your leader. That fighter's players roll 1 defense die for each of the chosen fighters upgrade. If they roll 1 or more shield symbols, nothing happens. Otherwise, the chosen fighter is a beast. No, I don't like that. Call to heal, choose 1 beast or savage fighter, push the chosen fighter 1 hex, or up to 4 hexes if it is a friendly fighter. Yes, very good. I mean, the very least it does is push 1. And that's always good, and pushing 4 is amazing. But then you have to be adjacent to a friendly fighter. With another friendly fighter. And then we have Dark Command, choose 1 beast or savage fighter, deal 1 damage to 1 enemy fighter adjacent to the chosen fighter. This is very good to set up that vulnerable search as well, so we need more cards to help us with that. Determined Brutality, first range 1, has Cleave and Snare. It's basically the same card that we ditched in their own deck, so I'm not going to take it here. We need 3 more cards, okay. Gore Swamp is +1 move to Corn fighters, and each other fighter has a move of 2, while that fighter is making move action. That's not part of a charge. Nah. Internal Surrender, choose 1 friendly fighter. The chosen fighter is savage. +1 dice to the chosen fighter's range 1. -1 defense from the chosen fighter to minimum 1. I would have taken this if it just persisted for the round, because then you could play it leading up to like a last attack, but this persists until the fighter is out of action, and giving up that 2 defense on our fighters. That's a hard bargain, to be fair. I don't really like it, but I might have to include it to get there. But maybe we don't need a +1 dice. We probably need to make people savage, but not sure. Lurking, maybe I have upgrades to make a savage, so we don't need this card. Lurking Narloaks, cover hexes are also lethal hexes. This effect persists until the end of the round now. No. Predatory Fog. After each fighter's activation, stagger that fighter unless that fighter made one more range 1 or range 2 attack actions during that activation. This effect persists until the end of the round or until another main gambit is played. No, I don't really like it. A Reckless Haste +2 move to fighters in the next activation. After the next activation, stagger each fight that made one more move. Yeah, I can live with that. +2 move cards is just like a classic card to include in aggressive warband, so I like it. Savage Caesar, choose 1 or more friendly fighters, heal 1, and stagger each chosen fighter. So that's good. To make people savage and to score the search card with being savage before you activate them. So you do it kind of leading up to your activation, then you are already savage before you activate them. So that's pretty good. That's 9 ploys though, so we need 1 more. Not sure here. Let's check the infection cards again, see if we can find something to fill out the blanks here. Maybe let's take. I think 50-50 cards aren't very good, but they are pretty fun. So let's take the Vengeful Strike. Surprise attacks can be really nasty. Let's take it. And then we have, let's see, go back to the Tooth and Claw cards here. We need to fill up 7 upgrade spaces here. Beast Claws is an attack action that's just way worse than their own, I think. I mean, two swords with 2 rerolls is decent, obviously, but I don't, they don't really need attack upgrades unless they make them savage. Beast Caller, when a savage friendly fighter is the target of an attack action, this fighter is supporting that fighter. After a reaction after a savage fighter is pushed other than by this reaction, push that fighter 1 hex towards this fighter. That's an interesting reaction because the reaction works for both enemies and foes as long as they are savage. So let's see. Brutal Transformation. You cannot give this fight card to a leader or a large fighter. This fighter's a beast +2 damage. That's amazing, but you can't make super action, so it's not amazing. Feral Alteration, you can't give it to a large fighter, and that disqualifies the card because it's +1 wound included in the card, which will then break the card once they are, you get the drift. Feral Instincts, this fighter a beast, +1 damage, this fighter's range 1. When activated, this fighter must make an attack action if they can, otherwise it must charge. If it can, otherwise it must make a move action that ends closer to the nearest enemy fighter. Yeah, I think we can live with this. +1 damage is kind of unnecessary, maybe. Gifted Ferocity is a mutation +1 dice to range 1. Very good. They all have range 1. After friendly fight's attack action that takes an enemy fighter out of action, you can play this for free. But very good card. Cannot give this to a large fighter. At the end of the action phase, heal 1. That's pretty decent, right? After friendly fight's attack action that takes an enemy fighter, you can give this for free. Yeah, let's take it. It's not amazing, but certainly doesn't hurt. Mark of the Stampede is +1 move and +2 while this fighter is savage. This is pretty interesting because it says this fighter cannot be staggered while this fighter is savage. But you can still put the savage stagger token on the fighter before you activate them, which will then make them savage. But then it gets removed, so they are no longer savage. Okay, yeah, that's just weird. But +1 move and possibly +2 move, I think it's worth it. And they will still be savage from the charge, and from having 2 wounds and stuff like that. So. Natural Hunters +1 move, and while this fighter is savage and or trapped, this fighter's have ensnares. I think move cards is pretty useful for this warband. Stubborn to the bone. We have the +1 move in the faction as well, and it treats lethal hexes as normal hexes, but I think +1 move and ensnare is better. Stubborn to the bone. Enemy warbands cannot push this fighter. In addition, while this fighter is savage, you can reroll 1 dice in this fighter's defense roll. Yeah, that's pretty good. Not having enemy fighters or warbands pushing this fighter is very good, and the reroll in defense doesn't hurt. We need 1 more card. Let's check the in-faction cards. See if we can find something to fill out the blanks here. Consecrated Pendant I don't want. +1, because it's +1 wound, it messes up the large fighter cards, and it makes your fighter worth 2 glory as well. Maybe we'll just take the +1 move, I don't know. Yeah, I think I'll take the +1 move. It doesn't hurt to have a lot of +1 move in an aggressive warband, and we want to get it in the face of the enemies as well. So I think the kind of mobility of the warband is getting a lot of buffs here, and I don't think it hurts. So let's check the searches here. We have the Forceful Banishment, which knocks people back, and that's very easy to do, unless you kill them. Wrathful Blow is killing someone with a wounded fighter, should be very doable. Driving someone back into an hex adjacent to a friendly fighter should also be very doable, and in my experience it is. Then we have the Embraced Savagery, which is to score immediately if all surviving friendly fighters are savage, and that's also very easy. Macabre Spectacle, you score after you kill someone if the fighter was savage before. It's probably one of the harder searches, but I think it's certainly doable. Then we have Toyed With, which is scored after a friendly fight's attack action if one or more enemy fights are vulnerable, and that we kind of include a couple of cards to make that happen, right? Strength and Unity is when you have the same tokens on each friendly fighter, very easy to do. Uncontested Might, if you hold 1 or more objectives in enemy territory, should be very easy, it's just 1 glory though. Then we have Vengeance Satisfied when more than half of the fights in 1 or more enemy warbands are out of action, and Focal Point needs your leader to be within 2 hexes of 2 or more other fighters from 2 or more warbands, and to be in enemy territory. It's not super easy, but I think it's hard enough for 2 glory. Hurricane Force is 3 glory for each surviving friendly fighter to be in enemy territory, and while having no enemy fighters in your territory. It's kind of matchup dependent, obviously, but I think it's for 3 glory. It should certainly be doable. A move or die needs you to have move or charge on everyone. Very easy for 1 glory. Push 1 hex an enemy fighter. Improvise blow, auto sequence attack that can benefit from +1 and plus dice and plus damage cards. Outflank is a push a fighter up to 2 hexes. But you have to be adjacent to another fighter when you do so. Thunderous Might is the deal the damage to every enemy adjacent instead of dealing the normal damage from the attack action. Then we have the kind of healing potion here. Vengeful Strike is 50-50 to do an attack and to not get driven back. Call to Heal is the push for 1 or push to 4 if you're lucky. Then this is the ping card. Then we have +2 move. We have heal 1 friendly fighter and stagger them. So that will make them savage then, so that we can score Macabre Spectacle to take someone out of action with a fighter that was savage before you activated them. And then we have we roll in the first attack roll in each round. It's not immensely good, but it's certainly useful. +1 move and treat lethal hexes as normal hexes. Damage reduction. +1 dice. +1 damage to range 1 attack actions. Just pay attention to that. This makes them into a beast. But I don't think that matters much because we don't have any weapon upgrades here. So it doesn't really matter. And then we have Gifted Ferocity, which is +1 dice, and you can give it for free if you kill someone. but then you have to give it to that specific fighter. And the same thing goes for this one, which is a heal 1 at the end of the action phase, but you can't give it to a large fighter. +1 move, or +2 if you're savage. And you can't be staggered while you're savage with this card. +1 move, and if you're trapped or savage, you also have a ensnare. Stubborn to the bone, and if warbands can't push you, and you get a reroll in defense if you're savage. So the case with this card, if you are, for example, staggered, then the enemy gets a reroll in attack, but you also get a reroll in defense with this card. So interesting. Then we have Ethereally Charged Shield, which is a reroll in defense. So I think overall this deck makes sort of sense. It's not going to be the most immensely strong deck in the history of mankind, but I think, and I probably could build an even stronger deck with the Fearsome Fortress, but I think Fearsome Fortress is so very overused in the meta right now. So I think it's kind of interesting to not take that specific deck this time. I think this one might certainly work. I do like to play Ironsoul Condemners. I think they are one of the most fun Stormcast warbands, which isn't saying a whole lot, but they are flavorful, and they are not too shabby. Great damage output and very good accuracy, obviously. A few solid cards in their own deck as well. So we have a good mix of own cards and rival deck cards here, because we have 3 searches from their own list, 3 end phases, 6 ploys from their own list, 1, 2, 3, 4 upgrades from their own list. So we were not relying too much on the Tooth and Claw here. So hope you enjoyed this deck building episode, and feel free to hit that like button, hit the bell button, leave a comment, and of course don't forget to subscribe as well. So without further ado, take care, bye. Critical focus.